What is happening, gang? Tonight I'm going to sharpen my Paramilitary 2 in Maxamet steel. Been using this at work a little bit, trying to get a worn edge on it. Put a few little scrapes on it, nothing too serious though. The edge has dulled up a bit. We're going to use my Venev Diamond Resin Stones. Now these stones, if you look along the sides here, they have the micron finish of each plate with an arrow pointing to it. Now ordinarily, the lower the number, the coarser the grit. In this case, the higher the number, the coarser the grit. The higher the number, the larger the micron is, basically. So the 160, 125 versus 180 micron. So according to their website, they've changed their grit ratings. I believe they used to use FEPA. I'm not real sure what they're using now. Basically, the 160 micron translate to 100 grit. The 100 micron translate to 100 grit, 120 grit. Move on to the next set of stones. You've got a 5040, which is 280. You got a 2014, which is roughly 700 grit. And the final stone, which is 7 and 5 micron, 2500 grit, and 3 and 2 micron, which is equivalent to 5000 grit. Now their old stones, they had an even higher grit of 1 micron and 0, which they considered 2000 grit. Again, they've changed their grit rating, but the micron sizes are still there. The 1 and 0 micron rating, I think, is still in testing phases. They haven't been able to quite perfect it. It creates stray scratches, which they're not too keen on, because they've had complaints from several sharpeners about that sort of thing. So I guess they've just taken it completely off the market. Tonight though, we're going to start on the 100 grit, which is 180, 125 in micron size, and the arrow points to the green side here. Once we're done with that, we'll go to the 120, which is 100 micron, and 80 micron, which is the gray side. As I said, been using this knife at work, trying to dull it up. We'll go ahead and cut that edge off. So I've now completely shaved the edge off. If you look at it under light, you'll see a reflection of light. And you can go about it two ways. You can either sharpen until you develop a burr, or you can just do alternating passes and continuously look at that edge pattern under light. When the reflection of white light disappears, you know you've reached the apex. It's time to move on to the other stone. In my case, I burr sharpen, so I'll just sharpen one side until I develop that burr. Then I'll flip, sharpen until I develop a burr. I know I've reached the apex on both sides. I'll do a few minimizing passes, then I'll move on to the next stone. But if you're new at this, cut the edge off, look at it under light. You'll want to see that white reflection of light coming back at you. Do alternating passes until that reflection disappears. Once the reflection disappears, then you can move on to your next stone. Regardless, I'm going to go ahead and get started here. I'm going to start on this side. Now with this particular knife, the plunge line does not go all the way to the base of the edge. I'm going to try to mimic what Spyderco has here. I may write up a little past that, I may not, I'm not sure. It just depends on how well my sharpening goes tonight. But I'm not going to try to grind past what's already existing. Done a few strokes. I'll now stop and take a look at my scratch pattern. Make sure I'm grinding where I need to be. If you're not familiar with this and you don't know how to judge where your scratch pattern is, take a Sharpie marker, color your edge. just like so. And don't worry about stray marks like this. To get the Sharpie marker off, all you got to do is take a little alcohol, comes right off. But mark your edge, go back to the stone, make a stroke or two, and then look, see where you're grinding. Now I can tell, because there's Sharpie still all along the bevel, my angle is too obtuse, so I need to drop the spine closer to the stone and make my stroke even shallower. Looking at it now, almost all of the Sharpie marker is completely removed, except for back here, but we'll get to that. But doing that low of an angle, that puts me right on the factory grind, which is where I want to be. I want to keep that angle until I develop a burr on the other side. I conditioned these stones recently in a video. I've now got a burr. I can fill a burr all along the entire edge, from the base to the tip. We've got a little flap of metal that has curled up and is creating a little bit of a ridge. You can see my fingernail. Shavings of my fingernail is now trapped underneath it. Hopefully that's picking up. Doing just a little more work down here at the base. I can still see factory scratches, but I'm going to let that ride. I've got a burr, so I've actually met the edge. I don't need to worry about those scratches. Now, as I was saying, I've conditioned these stones recently with loose silicon carbide powder. I've got my coarse stone here conditioned to a 46 grit loose silicon powder texture. It makes this stone very, very coarse feeling and very, very aggressive. Now I've got Sharpie markers still on this side. I'm going to lay the knife flat and check my angle. Down here in the base, I've removed almost all the Sharpie marker. Up here I can see where along the edge and the shoulder I've removed, but directly in the middle there's still some Sharpie marker there. I believe there's a bit of a hollow from where they grind it on a wheel. Just a few strokes and we should be able to get down to that. And as you can see, hopefully we're slowly working our way to it. Still haven't developed the burr. Got a burr now on the tip and the belly. Still missing it here in the base. Now with these diamond plates, they're not quite like you would see from DMT or Atoma. You can put a little pressure down on them and they will respond accordingly, just like a water stone. I've got a burr now all the way up the edge. I'm going to do a few alternating passes just to help clean it up. and we're going to flip sides. So we're going from 100 grit to 120. And really the grit rating is superfluous. You really don't need to worry about what grit rating it is. Just look at the micron size along the sides of the stone to tell which micron you're sharpening at. Obviously you want to start with the highest grit and then work your way down. Again, if you're unsure of how to hold your angle, take a Sharpie marker. This is where you're going to mark your bevel. I found this to be the easiest way to detect your angle. A lot of guys will put the knife on the stone and look for the shadow. I just find it easier to mark it, make my pass, look and see where I'm grinding, and adjust accordingly. Everyone has their own preference though. This is just another way to do it. As with all things, go with what works for you. Once again, my angle is still too obtuse. I need to drop it back down a little bit more. This knife is sharpened at a probably 15-degree angle, which is a lot lower than I normally sharpen at. I'm closer to 18 to 22 degrees when I freehand. Having such a acute angle, I tend to dull them much quicker in my line of work. So having a really acute angle, it's not my best edge. Now this shouldn't take too long, and it's not. I've got a burr already. I'm going to flip sides. Still got Sharpie marker. Once again, make a few passes. Check where I'm grinding. I'm almost right on the money. Except up here in the belly, kind of missing a little bit. Not a problem though. Just keep going. I've now hit that area. Just need to grind until I get a burr on the other side. And really getting the burr is not necessary at this point. As long as I can see my scratch pattern go from the shoulder to the edge, I know that I've hit the entire bevel. I'm good to go. Give it just a few more passes. Just like that, I'm done with this stone. I'm now ready to move on. My next stone is going to be the 280-700. Again, we're going to start on the coarse grit, work our way down. So we'll start at the highest micron level, which is 50-40, and move down to 2017, I believe that says. So we'll start on the green, finish on pink. Now it's not required or necessary to go through every single grit in a sharpening. This is my first sharpening of this Maxamet steel, and I want to get all of these stones in the video. Now this particular stone, when I conditioned it on my silicon carbide powder, I took it from 46 grit to 90 grit, and I finished it off on 120. I did the same thing with the finest stone. It looks like I'm just about done already. These stones are moving very, very quickly since the surface texture is conditioned so coarsely. I have found, especially with the coarser grits, once that texture wears down, the cutting speed decreases quite a bit. That's not necessarily a bad thing, especially for a beginning sharpener. The slower the stone cuts, the least likely you are to waste steel and to make mistakes that you cannot correct. You know, if trouble comes into paradise, When you're trying to remove a lot of steel though, and you're trying to get it done in a timely fashion, you may spend a little bit of extra time if the stone feels a little glazed. And if that's the case, you can always just take a silicon carbide stone, retexture the finish, or do as I do, take some loose abrasive silicon powder, put it on a sheet of glass, rub the stone across the glass until you develop the texture you want. But the way I've got these conditioned currently, they're moving quite speedily. I've got no complaints right now. Still haven't reached the apex on that side. And looking at my bevel sizes, this side looks like it's ground. The clip side looks like it's ground at a more acute angle than the show side. Either that or the main grind is off. Either way, the bevel on this side is going to appear larger than the other. Not a problem. It's just a cosmetic thing. Many people would probably never notice it. That being the case though, I may elevate my angle just a little bit. Alright, I've got a burr across the whole edge now. Do a few minimization passes and we will flip it over and finish out on this side. Again, the pink side, the grit rating is set for 700. The micron size is 20 and 14 microns. So what does it mean when it shows two different numbers like that, 20 and 14? It just means that the micron size is between 20 microns and 14 microns. I don't know how they get that average. I don't know what measuring device or how they come about that, but that's their measurements, 20 and 14 micron. So we'll go ahead and finish this edge up. Now this stone is much smoother than those coarse stones. I really like the texture of this one. And the coarse stone still used the old resin binder to hold the diamonds in the matrix. This stone and the finer grit are using the new OCB binder, and the OCB binder, from what I understand, does not have any abrasive qualities. So the only thing that's cutting the steel in these stones is the diamond. Consequently, they say the concentration of the diamonds in these stones is at 100%. They've got another set of stones where the diamond concentration is only at 25%. I would imagine those particular stones cut just a little bit slower than these, but since I don't have them, I can't do a side-by-side comparison to tell you if that's truly the case. In my opinion though, they probably don't make much of a difference in terms of speed. I wouldn't imagine you're going to notice a dramatic increase or decrease. At best, you may spend, maybe an additional 5 minutes per stone. And really, who's sitting there with a stopwatch timing themselves sharpen? I know I certainly don't. The only reason I know how long it takes me to sharpen is because I record these videos for you guys. And this is starting to polish up quite nicely. I've already got a burr on the other side. Now because I've elevated the angle just a hair on the clip side, I'm going to go ahead and lay the knife flat a little bit closer to the spine just to polish that bevel. Final stone tonight is our 7.5 micron and 3.2 micron, which translate to 2500 grit and 5000. Of course, we're going to start on the green side, finish on the pink side. Now I left this one textured to 120 grit, just like the last stone. Going by feel, much smoother. I can't feel the knife cutting the steel quite as much as I could, say, the coarse grit. The knife edge is just skating across the stone, almost like a piece of glass. I don't really feel much in terms of tackiness or the stone gripping the steel and actually cutting. I can't feel any of that. Now, it sounds like there's a lot of feedback. I'm gonna drop the angle and see if I can make it screech. So this is my actual angle. Ooh, that was over angle. I don't know if you heard it. Yeah, the stone will bark at you, and I cut right into the stone. I don't know if you can see that, but where I went over angle, I took a little chunk out of the stone. Forgive me for a second. I'm going to really hammer at this for a minute. Get that edge back where I drove it into the stone. Now I'm not applying any additional pressure here. I'm just going faster. So where I drove that edge into the stone, I want to remove any damage that may be there. Hopefully this is showing up on video. All the swarf and the metal shavings that are coming off. The stone is definitely taking material. I think that should get us. And it's been my experience with the finer grits here that they tend to load up much more than the coarser grits. Since I've got this stone so wet, I'm going to remove a little bit of this moisture and we'll see how it works. See if it starts to load up. Because I've got it textured so coarsely, that may not be the case right now. Seems to be holding its own very well. And the polish is looking even better. I'm starting to get some shine in there. I'm not sure how well it's going to pick up for you guys. And keep in mind, this is Maxamet. Maxamet can be a booger to polish. So I'm done with this side. We're going to go ahead and flip over to the pink side, which is rated at 5000 grit. Go ahead and get this guy squared away. So there's still plenty of tactile feedback in terms of sound. As far as feel goes, you're not getting a whole lot off of this coarse grit, or I'm sorry, this fine grit. It feels like sharpening on a ceramic with just a little bit less of a tactile feel as you go across the stone. Now you still get the audible indicators that if you've gone over angle or under angle, but the stone itself, it just feels like you're skating across ceramic, skating across glass. There's not much in terms of actually feeling the stone cut. Now I'm slamming this knife, slamming this ricasso into the side of the stones. I've been doing that on purpose to see if I can chip them out. when I flatten these, I did not chamfer these corners. These corners are as sharp, almost as sharp as a knife edge, really. They are pristine 90-degree angles, and so far they've held up very well to my knife slamming into them. Obviously, you don't want to leave your stone that way. You do want to chamfer the edges because they will chip out on you at some point. It's just the nature of sharpening stones, but I wanted to see how tough they were. In terms of flattening them, these stones are extremely wear resistant. It means they're going to last a very, very long time for you if you're sharpening on them. I had somebody come on my recent, or not my recent video, but one of my older videos for the Edge Pro Apex Matrix 4000 grit diamond stone, and they hammered me pretty hard about my misconceptions on the wear resistance of these stones, but at the time I just wasn't knowledgeable about them. You get such a small amount of abrasive, I just didn't think the value was there in terms of the price. Honestly, I still don't like how little abrasive you get, although I do know now they last quite a long time. I would still like to see these stones coming in around 5 millimeters worth of abrasive. They say on the website they sell them in 1 and 2 millimeter. My own measurements, I came out to 3 millimeter. I don't know if that's just an extra little bit of abrasive they throw in there, or if they've got a third set of stones that are even larger at 3 millimeter. I did not see them on their website, so I just assume they're making them at 3 millimeters, but telling everyone they're selling them at 2. That way you get a little bit more abrasive, and they don't have to worry about undercutting someone. And to tell you guys what, I am done with this stone. Just make a few finishing passes here. Haven't paid much attention to any of this. I've just been going at it. And just like that, this edge is extremely highly polished. And we'll go ahead and test the edge before stropping and after stropping. Hopefully you guys can see this. I turned the light out, so maybe it'll give a little bit more contrast. We'll go ahead and test the edge now before I strop. So that's 94. $113. And final test. $124. So before stropping, the edge comes out roughly to 110 on my Bess C tester. I'm now going to strop. This is 2 micron CBN Emulsion on leather. Let's see what we get. So that's 86. $79. Final test. $59. So the average on this knife is now coming out to 75. So I would say yes, indeed, stropping has improved it. I'll give you guys a close-up of this bevel. I gotta admit, these stones seem to polish much better than the original set I have. I've got some 4x2s in the original configuration, and they don't polish anywhere near this well. So I'm really impressed with the polishing effect of these stones. They performed very well. I'm going to sharpen a few more knives. I just got a Indela in K390. I'm really curious to see how it performs on these stones. So that's going to be my next project. Overall, these stones have done really well. Very happy with them. So you can pick these stones up, of course, directly from Venev. I'll have their website linked down in the description, as well as popping up on the screen here. I would tell you, I have no reservations about ordering things from Russia. I've done it before. There is a little bit of a wait time, but it's not terrible. These arrived approximately 3 weeks after they were sent, and it happened during the whole USPS issue during the Christmas holiday, so I thought that was really reasonable as far as shipping times. Well guys, I appreciate you watching. If you have any questions or comments, as always, leave them down below. Y'all have a good one.